I'm currently standing on the medieval village of Eccles-on-Sea, and yes, this is going to be exactly like my Shipden video, standing on a beach with my GoPro and my bag, talking about a sunken village. However, this village can be heard. Just like Shipden, most of the medieval village of Eccles-on-Sea is hidden underneath the waves, apart from the pre-war bush estate, which is protected from the sea by the sand dunes. One of the last parts of Eccles-on-Sea to go was the Church of St. Mary's. Built in the late 12th century, with a belfry added 200 years later, it stood the test of time. In 1570, 3 horrific storms wiped out Eccles-on-Sea and left the church in disrepair, leading to it being dismantled, apart from the large church tower, which was used as an aid to sea travellers. At the start of the 18th century, the tower was on the landward edge of the dunes, but over the years, sand had started to cover up the tower until only the octagonal belfry was visible. On the Boxing Day of 1862, unusually high tides carved into the sandhills and re-exposed the tower. Families and artists would often use this spot for picnics or as subject matters, and it affectionately became known as Norfolk's Lonely Sentinel. In Norfolk Life by Lilias Haggard, she remembers the eerie sight of the lonely church tower and the sea-bleached skeletons in their sandy slumber. As she wrote,
"One September day years ago, when the tower of Eccles Church still stood on the dunes, there came a northeasterly gale and a scour, which swept the sand from the old graveyard, leaving the long outlines of the graves washed clean by the sea. In one lay an almost perfect skeleton embedded in the clay, the hollow-eyed skull gazing up at the limitless sweep of sky.
On January the 23rd, 1895, one of the worst storms in living memory unfortunately sunk the tower. Ernest Stuffing, who lived up the coast in Haysborough, tried to light his pipe in the tower as the storm was bringing it down. He wrote for the Eastern Daily Press,
"That I was the last to enter the old tower is certain, as during the night the wind increased greatly in force, and the next day blew with such hurricane violence that the tower was continually surrounded by the sea."
and a reporter for the EDP added to his column by writing about the scene that was there the next day.
"On visiting the scene, the desolation presented to one's view is appalling.
After months of the storm, most of the masonry had been swept away or covered with sand, until only large chunks remained. David Stannard, an amateur archaeologist, author and historian, happened upon the ruins of St. Mary's on a strangely low tide in 1986, as he wrote,
If you go down to the beach on a Saturday evening when it is getting dark, there is a ruin of a church and a circle of flints in the sand. You can only think, how did this happen? The only reason I saw anything at all was the sea scouring away the area. What was exposed was foundations, cart tracks in the clay, Roman pottery, skeletons in graves, and these wells. I don't think I will see it again in my lifetime, but who knows?"
In May 1930, Lieutenant Commander R.N.A. Brooks, the officer in charge of HMS Boyne, reported hearing bells at around 9:30 a.m. around the area of Eccles, and having heard stories of Dunwich and Shipden, wrote to the EDP and said,
"When abreast of Sea Palling at about 9:30 a.m., I very plainly heard one stroke of a deep-toned bell. Have any of your readers heard any superstition of Eccles church bells being heard at sea?"
According to Mr. Stannard, it is extremely unlikely that the spectral bells are chiming underneath the waves. Mainly because the bells were sold off by the Lord of the Manor, Thomas Brampton, in 1571, and also because St. Mary's Tower is in lots of different pieces, 30 feet below, the sand. You know the drill. This video is made as part of my DOV Skills Award. Click the first link in the description to learn more. If you like historical, educational, or science videos, they're probably not scientific or educational anymore. They're just folklore from Norfolk. Anyway, consider subscribing. Bye. Ow.